Have you ever been to a Renaissance fair? Have you ever tasted the original 14th century gingerbread? Hint, it wasn't a cookie. Before starting this project, neither had I, and I'm a bit of an expert on cookies. In 2024, I started my home bakery, Sweetwater Sweets and Bakery in Oviedo, Florida. That same year, I attended my first Renaissance fair. I began to wonder, how can I adapt my modern cottage food business to be a vendor at a Renaissance fair? What would I wear? What would my booth look like? And most importantly, what foods would I make? Come along with me as I explore these topics and create my final project to graduate with a degree in Integrative General Studies and a minor in Art History. I began my college journey back in 2001 while I was still in high school. I got my AA in Business Management at my local community college because there were no art majors at that time, and I knew I wanted an art business. In fact, I started selling art my senior year of high school. So I filled the electives of my AA with art, painting, photography, and theater, acting in several plays while there. Through many years and life changes, I started seeking my bachelor's in art education in 2007. Then, after a 10-year break from 2012 to 2022, I came back to UCF to finally finish my bachelor's, now in Integrative General Studies. This Renaissance project blends academic research with practical application through my current home bakery business. Through participating in the Renaissance Fair, I'm able to draw on my background in business, art history, and education as I research the Renaissance and create the menu, the theme display, and the costume. My love of cooking with unique ingredients shines in this new, grand experiment. How can historically accurate Renaissance foodways, visual culture, and costume design be adapted into a modern cottage food bakery booth that educates the public as a form of public history and fosters community engagement at a Renaissance fair? My objective is to create a unique educational experience at a Renaissance fair, curating a menu, creating a period costume, and designing a vendor booth that reflects the aesthetic of a period baker's shop. By offering historically inspired baked goods with period-appropriate display and costume, I can help preserve culinary traditions and encourage curiosity about global food histories while staying legally compliant with Florida's cottage food laws. I was accepted to the Enchanted Nights March Renaissance Fair in Oviedo, Florida, which was indoors at the Oviedo Mall. The organizers, Wizards and Lizards Studio, had conducted several Renaissance fairs and other markets at which I was a vendor with my bakery. The theme of the March Fair was to be fairy tales and fables, and a themed booth and costume were required. I had to decide how to approach this. Should I do a fantasy theme like fairies or something more realistic with period clothing? The more I thought about it, I felt it would be most appropriate to sell as if I was a baker during the Renaissance. While I also love the enchanted fairy vibe, I wanted to try something new, a challenge. Now to decide which fairy tale or fable to draw inspiration from. I looked through my children's fairy tale books and saw the classic Gingerbread Man story. I quickly did some research and learned that the tale came from the 1800s. However, gingerbread formed into the shape of a man was decidedly late Renaissance. Molded gingerbread men came from the court of Queen Elizabeth. However, at that time, gingerbread was not a cookie, but more of a confectionery treat that could be shaped and molded or cut after curing. Therefore, I decided to take inspiration from the tale of the runaway gingerbread man that we all grew up with for my display. But I would cook gingerbread like the original 14th century recipe from the form of curry. This included unfamiliar spices like long pepper. When deciding on my other recipes to create, the next logical choice was bread. I'm not known for my bread and don't often sell it in my bakery. However, I had a bread recipe I loved that used a long, cold ferment, which I prefer. I adapted this modern bread recipe to include fresh milled grains, including the most ancient wheat, einkorn, wildflower honey instead of sugar, and dark Belgium ale instead of water. Other recipes new to me in this venture included German and Nice Springerle cookies, caraway shortbread, Heist, a date and nut energy bite that travels well, and quince paste known as membrillo. My goal with these new recipes was to let people experience flavors they had perhaps never tasted before. In order to appease modern palates, I also planned my customary vanilla sugar cookies with lemon royal icing decorated in Renaissance themes and vanilla shortbread shaped into Celtic knots. The new recipes required buying tools and ingredients like a grain mill, embossed rolling pins, quince, long pepper, caraway seeds, anise seeds, and whole grains. The next focus was to be my costume. I reviewed costuming books and fine art from the time period to see examples of clothing. I decided to stick with brown and white to match the classic gingerbread man motif. Looking at the clothing I had on hand, I found a white linen tunic and long flowy skirt I could dye brown. I also found a child-sized cotton chef hat, which I quickly realized could be altered into a Renaissance-style muffin cap that would fit me. I dyed this brown also. Then I hit the thrift stores, looking for linens or other fabrics I could finish my costume with. I was able to purchase a brown quilted blanket to use for my corset and a brown and white leather pouch. Having sewn since I was very young, I traced a pattern on myself reminiscent of the bodice style seen in fine art of the time. I hand sewed this corset bodice in my spare time, waiting in car lines, feeling very medieval. I added metal grommets for the lacing at the front. The last bit of my costume was the white ruffly underskirt and brown leather shoes, which were the only items purchased new. The final piece for my Renaissance vendor research project was the booth itself. I had been at many markets and art fairs as a vendor in the past. I couldn't use my canopy at an indoor market, but I could use my metal grid walls, tables, and shelving. Here are some examples of past markets where I've used these supplies. But this market would be different. How could I turn these into something worthy of a Renaissance fair? I began to research architecture of the Renaissance, not the grand castles or cathedrals, although I did consider that at first. But you wouldn't buy your bread and cookies from a castle or cathedral in the Renaissance, now would you? No, I wanted a display that looked like a regular building at the time. I decided on a Tudor-style home for inspiration, using wattle and daub timber walls and slate roofs. I called on my theater and photography past and treated this creation like a set in a play. I needed it to be transportable, sturdy, and fit the aesthetic. I decided to create a prop oven and accessories like set dressing. Finally, I added the interactive element of the gingerbread man himself, who will suddenly begin moving and running away, just like in the tale.
Run and run as fast as you can. You can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man.
I interviewed Victor No, an expert in the theming industry who has worked on projects like Harry Potter World at Universal Studios and other theming at Disney parks, SeaWorld, and museums, and many other amazing places. I questioned him about the best materials to use and how to assemble items, paint, and create an overall cohesive display that was structurally sound. He was very helpful throughout the project. The Enchanted Nights Renaissance Fair took place on March 14th and 15th of this year. I was able to meet my goals of creating a period-inspired menu, clothes, and display, and educating and interacting with the public, giving them the chance to experience tastes they never had before. However, 1 week before the event, I faced a personal emergency that took away time and focus right as I needed to finalize all the details. Sometimes things happen beyond our control. I was faced with the reality of needing to pare down my extreme plans. Some recipes were cut, like the hot water crust quince tart I planned to make, in exchange for serving the quince as cubes of membrillo instead. The costume I designed couldn't get finished in time, and I kept trying to finish it even as I was packing the car the morning of the fair. In fact, I continued sewing the bodice while at the fair. Thankfully, I was able to fashion together 2 outfits with a dress, a peasant blouse, a crocheted cloak, and skirts I already owned. I was able to wear my muffin cap during the event and kept my hair in a braid. For the display, I had the bare bones and a fitted canvas backdrop I painted to look like the mud plaster of a wattle and daub home. I had the prop oven and the gingerbread man and bakery signs. I had all the props, but not all of them went out the first day due to a mistake when someone else set up in my booth spot, which delayed the decorating. And once the market opens, there's no more decorating allowed, so much of it stayed boxed up. Even with the setbacks, the market was a success. I met so many lovely people and received compliments on both my outfit and my food. The moving gingerbread man was a delight to all who saw him. I sold so much on the first day of the fair I had to stay up most of the night making more decorated sugar cookies for the next day. It turns out that all the recipes I had used for the Renaissance treats took quite a while to create. Some take days and others take weeks. Thankfully, I had already prepared bread dough that I kept cold fermenting for the second day in the refrigerator. This meant the morning of the second day was spent packing up the new items before arriving at the market, in a rush to set up again for a second day. In my haste, I tripped in my new shoes at the entrance, breaking the interactive gingerbread man in the fall. I will add that the other vendors were so sweet, coming to help me up and check on me. And others, when they noticed the gingerbread man was not moving on the second day, tried to help repair the stick which had broken off. I ended up finding a nice spot for him to rest and still be a featured prop at the booth. When the fair was over, I took a deep breath, a sigh of relief, and spent spring break with my children. But the work wasn't over yet. I still needed to finish my costume and my booth display, not only for this research project, but for the several Renaissance fairs still coming this year. I'm so proud of what I was able to accomplish this semester. I plan to continue expanding my menu to include traditional, historical foods and exhibit them through cultural experiences with the community. I would like to also keep making period costumes for myself, and I have plans to transform my outdoor market canopy so that I can also attend outdoor Renaissance fairs throughout Central Florida. For now, I say fare thee well and huzzah.